Hello, everyone. I'm Denton Davidson, Senior Editor for Gold Derby, here with Larkin Seiple, the Emmy-nominated cinematographer for the Starz Limited series Gaslits. And Larkin, first of all, congratulations. This is your first Emmy nomination. So just walk us through that day the Emmy nominations came out. How did you find out? How did it feel? How did you celebrate?
It was great. I was just, I got a text from my agents and they just said congrats, and I was confused because they didn't say why. And then I was like, what's going on? They're like, you got nominated. And I was like, that's wild. And then I checked the roster, and like five of my other friends also had got nominated, which is pretty surreal to know other people that were also nominated. And so it was kind of fun to share it with a bunch of other nominees as well. Yeah, it was a trip. It was pretty wild.
What are you most looking forward to about attending the event itself? Is there anyone that you want to link up with or looking forward to meet or see? Who are some of your
Um,
friends?
yeah, my friend Todd Van Hazel got nominated for his HBO Showtime show. Wow, Winning Time. And then Christian Springer got nominated for Station 11. So it's kind of surreal to know like other contemporary DPs that are also going to be going to the festival. Not festival, but the show. I've never been, so I'm very curious to see what it's like. But they said I'm in for a good time.
And Gaslit is about the Watergate scandal, but focuses really on the point of view of Martha Mitchell, who's played by Julie Roberts. I'm a little embarrassed to say that, but I didn't really probably know as much about the story as I should have before I saw it. How familiar were you with Martha Mitchell before committing to this project, and then how did you end up involved?
Well, I think, I'm born in 85, so I'm about 10 years, a little too late for when this event actually occurred. I knew about Martha Mitchell because they had done like a drunk history on her story, hence
Hmm.
the Martha Mitchell effect, kind of getting to that background of it. But I think that's why the show was made, is because it's an untold story for the most part. Obviously, she was a celebrity at the time, but actually seeing the events and seeing it from her perspective felt new and compelling.
And the series begins with this close up of Liddy, played by Shea Wiggum. And I love his portrayal. And it starts with this close up of his face, and then it pans out until we see him holding his hand over this flame. Can you talk to us about what led to that being the opening shot and what it was like just filming that?
Um, Matt Ross wanted the show to kind of start with a very bold presentation. And we thought it'd be very absurd to start on someone's mustache, and to really be listening to what he's saying, because he has a very um, creepy monologue that's very, it really kind of gets you dialed into like the mindset of some of the people at the time. And we wanted to stay on it because Shay's performance was so strong that we did two versions of it. Actually, we did one version where we pulled out, one version where we zoomed out, and we found that the pull-out version was distracting, and we actually wanted to make it something subtler and softer. So we ended up throwing a zoom on the camera and doing a slow, which is fun because you start to like feel the smoke and and like this kind of like, a lighter is felt in the foreground, and you're kind of slowly revealing what's happening. Just kind of lets you understand like the mania that was occurring at the time. It was a fun choice.
Hmm. And what was your relationship with Matt Ross prior to filming this? And what did you two discuss when you came on board about what your vision was for this series?
Um, I didn't know Matt Ross at all. Obviously, I was a fan of his work as an actor, but also as a director. Captain Fantastic was a really fun piece of film that came out several years ago. We were actually at Sundance together with, I was there with Swiss Army Man. He was there with Captain Fantastic. Um, but when I first met him, he didn't want it to be an ode to the 70s, or he didn't want us to constantly be fighting to make it feel like we were literally there. He wanted to focus the visuals around the characters and the story. And what's fun about it is there's a lot of characters in the show that are heroes and villains, and he wanted to be empathetic towards both, so that you understand the good guys and the bad guys, and also why people will go to such outrageous depths to fulfill their need for, I don't know, destiny, fate, to believe in Nixon. And so for our whole approach was to not to necessarily show off that we were making a 70s film, but to feel like what it was like to be with someone in the 70s, to like be around them, to see the nuances, but not to single it out. We wanted it to be a very personal story. And so we designed kind of looks and lenses for each of the characters of the film. So Martha's whole theme is we see her through reflections, and that's repeated throughout the story. Shay's story is very surreal out of all the characters. And so we opted to find more distorted lensing and brought the camera really close to him to kind of understand what was creating this fire inside of him, if you will, to try to wonder what makes him tick.
Does that get complicated as you're shooting? So like you're like, oh, if it's this character, I need to use this lens for this one. And what if they're both in the same shot? How do you choose?
So we spent a long time testing, I don't know, 20, 30 sets of glass. We spent a whole day trying to figure out what lens suited each character. And we landed on some lenses called K35s for Martha that are softer and fall off, that kind of make her stand out. But we're more of her world. It just felt a little dreamier. Also, she kind of, she falls down a bit. She ends up falling into alcoholism and drug addiction. And we thought these lenses felt like they were the most subjective for that we could express what she was going through. And then for people like Shay, we found lenses that had more of a bite, that made the character stand out and had a higher contrast, and that felt just malicious, if that makes sense. And we opted to use those. And then for the scenes, we were dictated by the character's perspective. So if we were starting a scene with Martha, we would opt to use her lenses. And even in the middle of scenes, we would switch to other glass for the characters' close-ups to give them a different sense of feeling, or to have a different perspective on them. But we kind of created that theme throughout it. John Dean, one of the other characters in the show, we kept the camera potentially getting closer and closer to him as the pressure builds, because he's the guy that ultimately, he does something very bad. He assists in the Watergate scandal, but then he's also the first person to speak up when it's kind of about his trajectory down, but then back up, and kind of following that cycle with him. So we also changed the lenses from being very stressful and close to slowly pulling back and being a bit more restrained as he started making better decisions.
And the episode singled out by the Emmys is titled Will. It's the first episode of the series. What stands out for you about that episode in particular, from your memory of filming, and what was special about that for you?
It's we get to introduce all the characters for the first time, and things changed in the edit and things changed in the script. What was fun about it was getting to see Martha through the public eye at first. You see her on TV and on game shows, and you see her being interviewed. It takes a while before you can actually see her kind of let herself down and be who she is. The same thing with Gordon Liddy's character. You only know him through meetings. You don't actually get to see what's ticking on the inside until later. It was also a fun show because we had to establish Washington, D.C. At the time, and we were shooting in Los Angeles. So we actually were able to change the New York Street backlot at Universal and try to, convert it into, 1970s D.C. So it was fun for us as a crew, but also visually to try to showcase how the world was bustling and booming, and there was trash on the street, and it was cold and windy, even though we were shooting in the middle of summer. It's also the fun part of it was the montage at the end, as you see all the characters slowly starting to take their different trajectories around the scandal as things start to loom. And we kind of end on this image of Watergate over the bridge as Gordon Liddy and his henchmen are plotting the break-in.
What is the difficulty there of creating DC in Los Angeles, especially when you have some of those flyover scenes? I don't know if that's drone or is that visual effects, or how do you accomplish that when you're sort of doing a flyover, but it's DC in the 70s?
We explored going to DC to do a unit there, but it became too cumbersome. And what we decided to do was to send our second unit, director of photography, Mario Contini, there, and him and our VFX supervisor, Chad, went in and shot a lot of establishing shots. And then I oversaw some of the drone unit for that opening shot over the actual Watergate and the rivers around it. We knew we wanted to feel like we were in DC, and we didn't want to just use stock footage. We went there and we shot our own shots. And then we ended up actually taking a bunch of shots and putting our own people into them. So we would shoot, a wide of, a monument or something, and we would then come back to LA and shoot a bunch of, police on green screen and locals walking around, or, people bumming a cigarette at a bus stop, scenes like that. It was our way to try to build the world without having to, actually go there and, take a whole week to shoot it.
Hmm. My favorite scene from that first episode is Liddy and his son in the basement, just because it's so like creepy and bizarre. The entire interaction, the lighting, the dialogue, the set design, acting, and music. To me, that's like a symphony, that scene. What was it like just shooting that? It almost feels like it's from a horror genre in some ways. What was filming that scene like for you?
Um, well, the fun part about that scene is Lydia is such a surreal character and somewhat a violent man, and seeing him be kind of beaten and sad and having a moment with his son was something we wanted to heighten. So initially, he's playing with figurines or literally toys in his basement, brooding over it. And we like the idea of his son nervously coming down and walking into the light. I mean, the whole point of that scene too is that he's taking literally a child's advice to make friends with your enemies in order to get what you want. And that was the fun of it, was trying to start with something that's kind of cold and standoffish, and then get to a place where he literally is listening to his son and taking advice.
Yeah. What influenced you as a young filmmaker or an aspiring filmmaker? What made you want to get into the film industry or television industry, and become a director of photography?
I think I was just drawn to storytelling as a kid, and specifically films. I saw a lot of movies growing up, and I just kind of liked watching people's faces when they watched films. Like I remember taking each family member to see Jurassic Park when it came out individually, so I could watch them jump when there's the spitter scene, or watch them in the opening scene when Velociraptor is being pulled into the cage. I think I was just, I think the communal experience. Well, that was film. TV is a little different, but it's still the same, that everyone will show up on set and talk about something they saw the next day. I just like the magic of it. I think there's something very special that everyone kind of unites around one story, or is compelled by a story, or can feel from it or learn from it.
And we don't always get to see everyone behind the scenes, so people may or may not know watching this that you have a pretty big film out this summer, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was a tremendous achievement. I think it was the first A24 film to gross over $100 million, so congratulations on that as well. Just real quick, what has that whirlwind been like for you to be a part of this summer?
I mean, it was exciting because the movie we made was, very unique, and weird and awkward and outlandish and slapstick and grotesque. It was all these different things, and to see it embraced by so many different groups of people and different ages of people was pretty wild. And to see it slowly grow. I mean, it was never like the number one at the box office or what have you, but it just kind of kept going each week, and more people kept seeing it, and I kept getting more emails and texts about friends who had seen it. And I still get contacted by people being like, "Hey, I just finally saw it streaming last night. What a surreal way to tell a story." It's just great. I mean, I think everyone's just excited that it got out there and people saw it. The success is wonderful, but it feels really wonderful to have so many people see it and relate to it. And that was the goal, was to try to get people to open up and enjoy a film where there's a raccoon that lives on someone's head, and there's a office fight using a very weird office article. I don't know. It's been wild.
And it's fun just to see an original story succeed. And who knows? Maybe we'll be talking to you before the Oscars the next time. But it's been a good year for you nonetheless. Congratulations on the Emmy nomination. We'll certainly be cheering you on. To our viewers, head over to goldderby.com, make your Emmy predictions, check out more interviews with this year's nominees. And Larkin, best of luck to you, and thanks for stopping by and chatting with Gold Derby today.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.